At 18, my life changed in a single, terrifying moment. I was arrested for assaulting a girl I barely even knew. Her name was Clara Whitman, and suddenly, my whole town treated me like I was a monster. Friends I grew up with avoided me in the hallways, neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and even my teachers looked at me with suspicion. It didn't matter that I didn't do it. Everyone had already made up their mind. The worst part was my father. Randall Mercer, the man I had always looked up to, stood in our living room and told me I was on my own. His words cut deeper than any jail cell ever could. My mom tried to speak up, but she looked at me with fear, unsure if defending me would make her a target too. I had always thought family would be my safe place, but in that moment I realized I had no one. The ride to juvenile detention was silent. I kept my head down, heart pounding and mind spinning. How could everything I'd worked for, every friendship and connection, collapse overnight? I had no answers, just a growing anger and a sense of betrayal I couldn't shake. Inside those walls, I felt small and powerless. The other kids sized me up, some with curiosity, some with open hostility. Guards barked orders, making it clear that mercy was a luxury I wouldn't have. Days blurred into nights, and I found myself replaying that moment over and over. Clara had barely spoken to me before the accusation, and now her name was a weapon used to destroy me. I couldn't understand how a single lie, or maybe just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion, could ruin my entire life. The town that once celebrated my birthdays, cheered for me at soccer games, and welcomed me into their homes now whispered my name like it carried a curse. Fear turned into frustration, and frustration into a simmering anger. I realized that if I let this break me, I would lose everything, not just my reputation but my sense of self. I promised myself that I wouldn't stay a victim. I would survive this, and one day, I would find a way to reclaim my life. The world thought they had stripped me of everything, but they hadn't counted on me fighting back, not with violence, but with intelligence, patience, and determination. Even behind the bars, even with my father's cold words echoing in my ears, I held on to one thing: the truth. I didn't assault Clara Whitman. I didn't deserve this. And somehow, I knew that when I got out, I would make sure the people who betrayed me would see that. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and I wasn't going to let anyone else write the ending. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. I thought I could trust the people around me, neighbors, teachers, friends. We played together, laughed together, and shared secrets. But all of that changed in an instant. After the accusation, I saw how quickly people could turn. Friends I had known for years stopped talking to me. They avoided me in the hallways and whispered behind my back, never once asking if I was innocent. Even Coach Harper, who had always encouraged me, pretended I didn't exist. I had looked up to him, trusted him, and now he acted like I was a stranger. It was shocking to see how fast respect and care could vanish. Every friendly face from my childhood felt like it was hiding something, and every smile seemed fake. The whispers didn't stop at friends or teachers. I started hearing about rumors spreading faster than wildfire. It wasn't just the town. Simon Whitman, Clara's older brother, seemed to enjoy making my life miserable. He told stories that painted me as a criminal, exaggerating details and twisting the truth. I couldn't understand why someone I barely knew wanted to ruin me so badly. I felt completely alone. My world, which had always felt safe, suddenly felt hostile. Every place I went, I could feel people judging me. I remembered times when I had laughed and played freely with neighbors, and now even the familiar streets felt strange and cold. The betrayal hurt more than the arrest itself. I realized that the people I trusted could betray me in a heartbeat. I tried to tell myself it was just confusion, that people didn't know the truth yet, but every lie and every glance made me angrier. The more I saw their reactions, the more I wanted to find a way to prove them wrong. Not just for myself, but to show them that blind trust and gossip could destroy lives. The anger grew quietly inside me, simmering like a fire I couldn't put out. I felt isolated and small, trapped in a world where everyone I cared about had turned against me. The betrayal of friends, the avoidance of teachers, and Simon Whitman's calculated cruelty made me realize I couldn't rely on anyone. I had to find strength within myself, and that anger, as painful as it was, started to feel like fuel. I knew I couldn't stay broken forever. Somehow, I had to take control and show them the truth. Even in that moment of despair, I began to understand something important. Betrayal teaches who your real friends are, and it shows you how strong you can become when you face it alone. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I wouldn't let this be the end of me. I wanted my family to stand by me. After everything that happened, I thought my dad would be the one person who believed in me. I went to him, hoping he would listen, hoping he would tell me it wasn't my fault. But Randall didn't even look me in the eyes. Instead, he blamed me, saying I had brought shame to the family and that he needed to protect his reputation. His words hit harder than any punishment I had faced, and I realized that the man I had always admired didn't care about my side of the story. My mom, Evelyn, was different. I could see the pain in her eyes, the sadness she tried to hide. She wanted to defend me, I could tell, but fear kept her silent. She looked torn, caught between wanting to protect her son and keeping the family intact. I couldn't hold it against her. I understood fear, but it made me feel even more alone. For the first time, I truly felt the weight of being abandoned by my own family. I had trusted them to be my shield, to be my safe place, but that trust was gone. It was a cold, empty feeling, knowing the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were more concerned about appearances than the truth. I spent hours replaying every conversation, every look from my parents. Each memory reminded me that family ties couldn't protect me, no matter how strong I thought they were. It was a bitter lesson, but it was real. I started to pay attention to everything around me, how people acted, what they said when they thought I wasn't listening. The small ways betrayal had crept into my life. Anger began to settle in, quiet at first, then stronger. It wasn't just about being treated unfairly by strangers or neighbors anymore. It was personal. Those who were supposed to love and support me had turned away, and I couldn't forget it. I started thinking about how to make them see the consequences of their choices, not in a reckless way, but in a way that made them understand what they had done to me. Even in that isolation, I felt a strange clarity. I realized that if I waited for others to fix this, nothing would change. I had to rely on myself, to use my own mind and strength to reclaim my life. The betrayal didn't just hurt me. It ignited something inside me, a need to rise above it, to show the people who abandoned me that I could survive and come out stronger. I began watching carefully, noticing every weakness, every mistake of those who had turned against me. The seeds of revenge were planted, growing quietly in my mind. I didn't know exactly how it would happen yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't powerless anymore, and I would make sure the people who had hurt me understood the price of betrayal. Life in juvenile detention hit me the moment the doors closed behind me. The air felt heavy, and the noise never stopped. Guards shouted orders without care, and the other detainees looked at me like I didn't belong there, but not in a good way. They didn't see me as innocent or confused. They saw me as weak, someone they could push around if they wanted to. I kept to myself, trying not to draw attention, but even then, it was clear I didn't fit in. The guards weren't much better. They acted like everyone inside was already guilty, like none of us deserved kindness. They talked down to us, ignored questions, and made sure we understood we had no power. Every day felt like a reminder that the world outside had turned its back on me, and now this place was doing the same. Meals were silent. Free time felt tense. I often sat alone, waiting for the hours to pass. I could feel the anger growing inside me, not loud or wild, but cold and steady. I realized that the betrayal from my town had left more damage than I first thought. It had changed the way I viewed people. Trust felt like a luxury I no longer had. Things shifted the day I met Mackenzie Mac Harris. He was older, calm, and unlike the others, he didn't look at me with judgment. He had a quiet confidence that made people respect him. One afternoon, he sat across from me in the yard and said, "You keep staring at the ground like it's going to save you." It was the first time someone spoke to me without anger or suspicion. Mac had been in detention longer than most, and he knew how everything worked. Over time, he started teaching me little things: how to read people, how to avoid trouble before it started, how to stay quiet but aware. He told me that surviving wasn't about being the strongest, but being the smartest. Mac never asked about my case, but he could see the hurt in my eyes. One day, he said, "You can't change what they did to you, but you can decide what you're going to do with the anger." His words stayed with me. Being in that place gave me a lot of time to think. I thought about the people who had turned against me, the lies, the way my life had been torn apart. I started to understand that revenge didn't have to be loud or violent. It could be quiet, sharp, and controlled. Mac taught me that planning was power, and power was something I needed if I ever wanted to take back my life. I made a silent promise to myself. I would make them pay for what they did. Maybe I could do it without breaking the law, Or maybe the line didn't matter anymore. All I knew was that when I got out, I wouldn't be the same scared boy who walked in. I would be someone they could never ignore again. I never expected to learn anything important inside detention, but sometimes the truth shows up in strange places. It started with small whispers. 2 boys were talking in the corner, thinking no one could hear them. They mentioned Clara's name, then mine. At first, I thought they were just repeating the same rumors everyone else believed, but then one of them said something that froze me in place. Clara had lied. I didn't react right away. I just listened, pretending I wasn't paying attention. They said Clara never wanted the police involved, and she had told someone she made up the story because her brother, Simon, told her to. The more they talked, the more the pieces started to connect. Simon wanted to embarrass me because of a small argument at a town event a few weeks before everything happened. A petty argument, something so simple, had exploded into the destruction of my life. Hearing the truth didn't make me feel better. It made everything worse. The anger hit me deep in my chest, sharp and burning. I had lost my freedom over a lie. I had been judged, hated, and abandoned over something that never even happened. Simon wanted to ruin me, and Clara let it happen. She didn't care what it would cost me. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, thinking about every person who had turned their back on me. Faces came rushing into my mind. Friends who didn't bother to ask if I was okay, neighbors who avoided me, teachers who pretended not to see me. And of course, my own father, who didn't even give me a chance to explain before pushing me out of his life. I started keeping a list in my mind. Not on paper. Mac warned me never to leave anything that could be found. But in my head, I wrote down every name, every cruel action, every judgmental stare. It wasn't about hurting them just to hurt them. It was about balance. About making sure they felt even a piece of what they had made me feel. The grief was heavy too. I grieved the life I had before the lies. I grieved the trust one once had in people. I grieved the person I used to be, someone who believed that truth always won. Now I knew better. Sometimes lies won, and the only way to survive was to stay one step ahead. But under the grief was something stronger. A desire to fight back, not with fists, but with careful planning. I didn't want to be reckless. I wanted to be precise. Every move had to count. Every action had to be controlled. By the time I fell asleep, one thing was clear. When I got out, I would make sure every person who helped destroy my life would face their own consequences. Not with rage, but with strategy. They took everything from me, and I was going to take something back. Walking out of juvenile detention felt strange. I was free, but the world didn't feel welcoming. The court cleared my name, yet the town didn't seem to care. Some people pretended nothing had happened, while others still looked at me with doubt in their eyes. A few whispered when I passed, as if the truth meant nothing to them. I realized quickly that being innocent on paper didn't erase the damage. I kept my head down and found a small job at a local warehouse. It wasn't much, but it gave me a place to start. I worked quietly, stacking boxes and moving shipments. Most of my co-workers didn't talk to me, and I didn't try to change that. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to watch and plan. Every day after work, I walked through the town with a calm face, but inside, my mind was sharp and alert. I paid attention to people who had turned their backs on me. I studied their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. I didn't want to hurt anyone physically. I wanted something different, something cleaner. I wanted the truth to catch them the way lies had caught me. Simon was at the top of my list. He walked around like nothing had happened, like ruining my life was just another story to laugh about. I followed him from a distance, learning where he went and who he talked to. I noticed things others ignored, his temper, his secrets, the careless way he treated people who trusted him. I stored every detail in my mind. My old friends were no better. Some acted like they never knew me. Others gave weak smiles, pretending they felt bad, but never apologizing. I watched them too. I saw how quickly they lied to impress new people, how they cheated on tests, how they talked badly about people who weren't around. They had built their reputations on fake kindness, and I planned to let those masks fall. The teachers who once avoided me were also part of my quiet study. I observed how they treated students unfairly, how they protected the wealthy kids, how they ignored problems they didn't want to deal with. They weren't as innocent as they pretended to be. I never broke any laws. I didn't need to. All I had to do was create moments where people revealed who they really were. Sometimes it was as simple as asking the right question in front of the right person. Other times, it meant sharing something true and watching them react in a way that exposed their lies. The town thought I was still weak, still the scared boy who had been dragged away in handcuffs. They had no idea how much I had changed. I wasn't loud about it. I didn't threaten anyone. I just waited, watched, and placed every piece in the right spot. And slowly, I felt the power shifting. I wasn't the one being judged anymore. I was the one watching, planning, and preparing to take back the life they tried to destroy. I knew that if I wanted real payback, it had to start with the people who caused the biggest damage. That meant Simon and his family. They walked around town like they were perfect, like they could do anything without consequences. But I had spent weeks watching them, learning their patterns, and I noticed something others didn't. Simon's father wasn't as loyal to his family as he pretended to be. I first saw him one evening near the edge of town. He wasn't alone. He was meeting a woman who was definitely not his wife. They talked quietly, too close, too familiar. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with the information, but then I realized it could be the perfect first move. Not violent, not illegal, just truth in the right place at the right time. I didn't confront him. I didn't record anything or leave evidence that could come back to me. I simply made sure the right people found out. The woman's boss happened to be friends with someone who loved to gossip, and all it took was one comment placed in the right ear. I said it casually, like someone repeating something they heard from someone else. From there, the rumor took on a life of its own, spreading faster than I expected. Within days, whispers about Simon's father were everywhere. People who once praised his family now looked at them differently. His mother found out, and the shock spread through their home like a storm. Simon, the same boy who lied to ruin me, suddenly became the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. His confident, loud voice turned quiet. His proud walk lost its strength. And no one suspected me. I stayed in the background, working at the warehouse, keeping my routine normal. When people talked about the scandal, I listened like everyone else. Not one person connected it to me. That was the victory, striking without being seen. Seeing Simon struggle didn't erase what he did to me, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. I realized I could cause damage without touching anyone, without breaking a single rule. I learned that truth, when revealed at the right moment, could be sharper than any weapon. That small win filled me with a new kind of confidence. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was planning. Every bit of anger inside me shifted into focus. I understood that revenge didn't need to be messy or rushed. It needed to be smart. And I could be smart. That day, I felt something change inside me. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't the boy everyone turned on. I was becoming someone different, someone careful, someone strategic, someone they could not predict or stop. After dealing with Simon's family, I turned my attention to the others who had dropped me the moment things got hard. These were people who once laughed with me, shared secrets with me, and acted like they cared. But when the lie spread, they didn't hesitate to step away. I didn't plan to hurt them physically. I wanted something different. I wanted their own actions to expose who they really were. I started with the ones who were greedy. A few of my old classmates loved quick money and shortcuts. All I had to do was mention a great opportunity I heard about, a small investment that promised fast returns. I didn't push it. I just planted the idea. They rushed into it without checking anything, and of course they lost money. Not because I scammed them, but because their own greed led them into a trap they created for themselves. When they complained, people just shook their heads, wondering how they could be so careless. It made them look foolish, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Then there were the ones who lived off fear. They acted tough, but inside, they were always hiding something. I made sure their secrets slipped out in small ways. A comment placed at the right moment, a truth shared where the wrong person could hear it. Nothing illegal, just nudging truth into the open. Watching them scramble to protect their image felt like payback without crossing any line. I also exposed the hypocrisy of certain community members. Some adults who had judged me the harshest were not as perfect as they pretended to be. One teacher who ignored me during my worst days was caught gossiping about parents. Another who spoke loudly about good morals was secretly mistreating students. I didn't invent anything. I simply let things be seen. People began questioning them, and their fake reputations slowly cracked. As all this happened, something unexpected occurred. The town's elite, the people who usually ignored kids like me, started noticing me. They didn't know what I was doing, but they sensed I wasn't ordinary anymore. They saw someone quiet, calm, and strangely confident. A person who seemed to know things others didn't. Their curiosity grew, and that curiosity gave me a kind of power I never had before. Meanwhile, everyone else stayed unaware of how much I watched them. I moved through the town like a shadow, harmless, silent, but always there. People talked freely around me, never suspecting I was keeping track of everything. The tension built slowly. Some felt uneasy without knowing why. Others sensed something was changing but couldn't explain it. What they didn't realize was simple. Their lies and actions were finally catching up to them, and I was making sure of it. I knew the time would come when I had to face my father. Randall Mercer had turned his back on me when I needed him the most, blaming me to protect his own image. I waited, watching, planning, and when the moment was right, I went to him. I wasn't angry like I had been before. I wasn't shouting or pleading. I was calm, steady, and ready. He looked at me with the same cold arrogance he had always shown, expecting me to be small and weak. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I took a deep breath and showed him what I had. I had gathered proof of his unethical dealings, documents, records, and details he could not deny. His confident expression faltered when he realized I had everything in my hands. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The man who had once made me feel powerless now understood that the tables had turned. I spoke clearly, carefully, letting him see that I was no longer a child who could be pushed aside. "You thought I was nothing," I said. "But now you see I have power too, and I won't let lies and betrayal go unanswered." He tried to argue, tried to dismiss it, but the proof was undeniable. I stayed calm, letting the weight of the truth speak for itself. He shifted uncomfortably, the arrogance and pride he carried for so long breaking apart piece by piece. I realized then that he had underestimated me all along. He thought I was weak, and I had used that to prepare myself. My mother, Evelyn, watched silently at first. I could see the regret in her eyes. She had wanted to defend me all along but feared the consequences. Now she stepped forward, her voice soft but full of emotion. She apologized for not acting sooner and for letting me face the world alone. Her words didn't surprise me. I had expected them. I nodded, acknowledging her sorrow but keeping my composure. I wasn't looking for comfort or forgiveness. I wanted her to see that I had grown stronger, that I had learned to stand on my own. The confrontation didn't last long. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, and I didn't threaten. I simply showed them the truth, held my ground, and let them feel the weight of their choices. My father had to face the consequences of underestimating me, and my mother had to see that I had changed. When I walked away that day, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. I didn't need to punish them further. I didn't need to prove myself with anger. They had finally realized that the boy they once dismissed was gone. In his place stood someone strong, smart, and unshakable. A person who would never allow betrayal to define him again. I saw Clara Whitman again on a quiet afternoon. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her hands, eyes avoiding mine. I could tell she regretted what had happened, but seeing her now, I realized it wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had let the lies spread. She had played her part, but there was a bigger story that needed to be told. I spoke calmly, letting her hear that I knew everything. I knew the lie, I knew Simon had orchestrated it, and I knew her family had stood by without question. Her face went pale, and she stammered, trying to explain herself. I didn't yell or shout. I just let her feel the weight of the truth. It was time for her and her family to face what they had done. I arranged for the town to hear the full story. I made sure Simon and his family couldn't hide behind excuses or lies. They had to acknowledge publicly that they had spread false accusations and tried to destroy my life. I watched as the words left their mouths, as the people who had doubted me saw the truth finally revealed. The whispers turned to murmurs, the judging glances softened, and for the first time, the town saw me for what I really was, a survivor who had endured betrayal, false accusations, and isolation, yet had come out stronger. Even as respect and admiration grew around me, I realized I didn't need it. The point wasn't to make them feel small or to seek revenge anymore. I had already reclaimed my life. I had already shown that I wasn't the powerless boy everyone assumed. My actions spoke louder than any words, and the truth had been made clear without me lowering myself to anger or cruelty. Walking away from the confrontation, I felt a freedom I hadn't known before. I didn't need approval, forgiveness, or praise. The people who had hurt me had seen the consequences of their choices, and that was enough. I had my power back, my identity intact, and a future that wasn't defined by anyone else's lies. I looked around the town one last time and realized something important. Life wasn't about punishing those who wronged you. It was about standing tall, learning from the pain, and moving forward stronger. I had survived. I had learned. And now, nothing could take away what I had earned for myself.